Hello again. Today I'm going to go over the homework for Chapter 6. This is about the funding of the public sector, or maybe we could call it the design of the tax system. Big picture things, more big picture things anyway, about taxes. So here we go. Number 1, a senior citizen gets a part-time job at a fast food restaurant. She earns $8 per hour for each hour she works, and she works exactly 25 hours per week. Thus, her total pre-tax weekly income, also called gross income, is $200. Her total income tax assessment each week is $40. She pays $3 in taxes for the final hour she works each week. And we're asked to find in A, her average tax rate, and in B, her marginal tax rate for the last hour she works. So we have to convert those things, those numbers, into rates. So her gross is $200. Her tax obligation is $40. So for A, her tax rate is equal to $40 of, that's what she has to spend in taxes, over her income of $200. And that is 1/5, or so we call it 0.2, which is 20%. She's paying 20% in taxes, we would say. But that's a different animal. I mean, it's a close cousin, but it's a different animal to another important thing, her marginal tax rate. So the author tells us that she spends $3 on taxes for the final hour she works each week. So her marginal rate, and I'm kind of being a little bit, this could apply to many things, so I'm going to just say for now, just marginal rate. We know we're talking about taxes. Is her change in this tax obligation over her change in income. Marginal for us, marginal sometimes used to mean like small or incremental, and that's still true, but for us, when we're calculating things, we're always talking about a change. It tells us that she's spending $3 of her last hour working on taxes. So that's the 3 here. What's her income change by working that last hour? It's how much she makes per hour. So that's eighths, and we're talking about 3/8, which is, should probably have this memorized, but I don't. That's 0.375, which is 37.5%. So her marginal tax rate is 37.5%, but her tax rate, or her average tax rate, what she spends in taxes as a percent of income, is 20%. So she's spending more on her next hour of income than her average rate. Okay, so that's 6-1. I believe the next one we did was 6-4. I think while we're working on this, I don't know if I've asked you this or not, but you can look into who Hermann Hesse was. You can see I'm a Hesse fan. Maybe I'll make that a reveal at the end. You also might look at that picture behind me as you're facing the screen on the left, and see if you can figure out who created that. That's a print, of course, but who created that picture? He's a famous person, creating a picture of a famous person. Okay, so 6-4. Refer to the table in picture in problem 6.3 when answering the following questions. So we're asked if Christina experiences progressive, proportional, and so forth. So the way I approach this is I think I'm going to largely have to copy this table, except I'm going to abbreviate instead of writing out the names. C for Christina, her income was 1,000. Actually, I can do it like this. Everybody has the same income, 1,000, 2,000, or 3,000. Those numbers are the same for each, so we have an extra couple of columns there. So now I can say what they pay in taxes maybe over here, and I'll leave space between these to calculate the rates. I think I have enough space by doing it like this. And Christino pays 200, 300, and 400. Jarius pays 200, 400, and 600. And Meg pays 200, 500, and 800. So this is all just copied from the table. I just did away with a couple of extra columns. Now I'll use a different color so it doesn't get too jumbled because it's prone to doing that, looks like. So what I looked at was the average rate that each would pay at each of these levels of income, because we have the income and we have the tax obligation for each of these people. You might not hear that. My cat's, he seeks attention. So Christina would spend 200 in taxes when Christina made 1,000 in gross income. So Christina's tax rate at that bracket or at that level is, I'm going to just use an arrow to say 200 over 1,000, which is 0.2 or 20%. When Christina moves up to 2,000, the obligation becomes 300. So that's just 300 over 2,000, which is 0.15 or 15%. When Christina makes 3,000, Christina has to pay 400 of it in taxes, and so 400 over 3,000 is 0.13 or 13%. So we can go ahead with this information and think about something a little bit more meaningful than just doing division. Does Christina experience, this is A, does Christina experience progressive, proportional, or regressive taxation? As Christina's income is moving up, what's happening to Christina's tax obligation? It's moving down, 20%, 15%, 13%. So this is rising income with a falling tax obligation. We call that a regressive structure or system that this person would face. So that would be A. Let's check out, what's this person's name? Jarius. Jarius, this is the same, 200 and 1,000. They're all the same there, so we know that this is 20%. We also know this is 20%, because it's the same numbers, okay? 200, everybody pays 200 for the first 1,000. Let me show you something. Hello, William. Here he comes. Well, what can you do? It's coronavirus time. Maybe he won't get in front of the camera lens. We'll see. Now, when Jarius makes 2,000, Tax obligation rises to 400. So 400 over 2,000 is equal to, I really don't have enough space. What is that without me trying to think? Oh, that's also 0.2. When Jarius' income goes to 3,000, that's 600 over, I missed that there, 2,000. And guess what? That's 0.2. No matter what this person's income, their tax obligation is such that it's 20% of income. So that's for B. Oops, for B, that's proportional for that person, or for this person in this tax system that he or she faces. Our last person, whose name starts with M, Meg. When Meg's income is 2,000, Meg's top tax obligation becomes 500. 500 over 2,000, I don't need to look to know what that is. That's a quarter, or 25%. So we know where this is going already, I think. 800 is her tax obligation when she makes $3,000. And I will peek because I don't want to think. And that's 0.267, or 26.7%. It's getting a little tight. 26.7%. So her tax obligation, as her income goes up, goes from 20% to 25% to 26.7%. So what kind of a tax system does Meg work under? She works under a progressive tax system, because her tax rate is rising as her income rises. Now, this is a very simplified thing where we're looking at income and presumably income tax, and this is the structure we have in the United States for the income tax, which is the largest source of revenue for our federal government. It's also the structure we have for the state of Maryland on income taxes. But a fun thing to do is to think about all the taxes we pay, because we also have a sales tax. We also have voluntary taxes like lottery and basically the casinos. And so if you wanted to do this or think about this, these numbers that we have in black, here we're just using straight from income taxes, but those aren't the only taxes we pay. Suppose we went across individuals and added up all the taxes they pay, perhaps in property taxes, as I said, sales taxes and voluntary taxes like lottery and stuff like that. If you added up all the taxes people pay, the progressive tax system that we have built into the income tax structure may not turn out to be quite as progressive, because it could be that poorer or lower income people pay more in other taxes than income taxes, and it might balance out on the net when you added up all the taxes. If you were to put all the taxes a person's paying into these slots, you might find we have more of a proportional system, or in some cases maybe even a regressive system, because some taxes, like lottery, are almost certainly, they're voluntary taxes, but they're almost certainly regressive. So that to me is something very fun to think about. It's not something we do as an exercise here. There's just too much to that, but it is something to be aware of when you're watching your Fox News or your CNN. Okay, so that's 6.4, on to 6.6. I'm going to need this board, so I'm going to erase it before I even read that question. You probably have something else to do. You're probably desperately wondering who Hermann Hesse is and who created that picture of him on the left. Okay. Okay, here we go. The sales tax rate applied to all purchases within a state is 0.04 or 4% throughout 2016, some year. but they raised it to 5% during all of the next year, 2017. Excuse me. The state government collected all taxes due, but its tax revenues were equal to $40 million each year. What happened to the sales tax base between 2016 and 2017, and what could account for this result? So do you get what they're saying there? They raised the rate, but the revenues they received stayed the same. He's referring to the tax base, and in the text it refers a lot to dynamic and static analysis. I didn't use those terms on the video describing the chapter directly, but I did bring those concepts into something in a big picture. So now I can focus more in on narrow kind of definitions here. So they raised the tax from 4% to 5%, which I can tell you in the state of Maryland, when we went to 5% to 6%, which was in the spring of 2008, it was passed in the fall, special session of the fall of 2007. It was interesting. Politically, it's sort of funny. This was a good chance to see the effects of framing that politicians do. Those who favored the tax increase called it a 1 cent increase. We went from 5% to 6%. So on a dollar, it was a 1 cent increase in taxes. And 1 cent, we all know, is small. We walk by pennies on the ground all the time. We probably don't bother to pick them up. So calling it a 1 cent increase makes it sound very small. The opponents of the tax increase called it a 20% increase in the sales tax. Let that sink in. A 20% increase in the sales tax when it went from 5% to 6%. How is it a 20% increase in the sales tax? It went from 5% to 6%. How is it a 20% increase? It went up 1% on 5. That's 0.2, that's 20%. It was 5%, now it's 6%. 6%, I'll get there. That is a 20% increase. So it's a case where both sides of the debate are speaking factually correctly, but framing is very, very different. And it's simply designed to spin you to their point of view. So watch out. Here, this tax increase was 1% from 4 to 5, or 1 cent, because it's 4 cents on the dollar to 5 cents on the dollar, or a 25% increase in the tax rate, because it went from 4 to 5 in the homework question. 4 to 5, that's a 25% increase in rate. A 25% increase in rate yielded no difference in revenue, because it says in the question that revenue was $40 million each year, unchanged. So if you think back to what is in that previous video about the chapter, here's our tax revenue. That says tax rev. It is a function of the tax rate. And I just distinguish these a little bit more by using capitals here and lowercase here, which is actually, it's when you look at this model in a lot of books, that is fairly customary. What we're saying is we went from 4% to 5%, and what happened to the revenue when it went from 4% to 5%? It went from 40, whatever the units, millions, to still 40 million. So where are we along that Laffer curve? We're at the peak, because the slope here is 0. The rise, given that some change in run, was 0. So that's what it means in terms of our model. What is happening? What's causing that? That means that people are maybe moving to self-sufficiency, moving to black markets where they don't have to pay the tax, buying out of state. I actually did a report on that special session, the tax hikes that we did in the state of Maryland in the fall of 2007. I looked at the income tax increase, the sales tax increase, the corporate income tax increase, and The cigarette tax increase, the tobacco tax, they doubled that one. It was 100% increase. As I said, the sales tax in Maryland in January 2008 moved from 5% to 6%, a 20% increase in rate. And this is actually what I found. It it might have been up a few dollars, give or take, but when you controlled for other things, because this is holding all else constant, so I used some, you know, fairly advanced statistics to control for other things. And what I found was the sales tax increase in 2008 did about like this question is saying here. It didn't really raise revenue. It was not statistically different from zero. Of those four taxes that were raised in January of 2008, the only one that rose revenues statistically different from zero, you want to guess? Here are your choices again: the income tax rate, the corporate income tax rate, the sales tax rate, which I already revealed it isn't that, and the cigarette tax. Which one raised revenue more than we see here? You give up? You dying to know? The cigarette tax raised revenue, something positive. It doubled. It was 100% rate increase. It didn't double revenues though. It raised revenues, if I remember correctly, about 30%. So it was a 100% raise in rate. 100% doubled down here, but the revenue rise here was about 30%. If I'm remembering correctly from my work, I could find that if you were dying to know. The piece I did was presented to the House Ways and Means Committee in our legislature and fell on deaf ears. But what that means is, well, let me not ask it that way. Why is it that the cigarette tax actually raised revenue? Why do you think? It ties into something we mentioned with taxes before. Think of John Goodman in The Gambler. If people are addicted to cigarettes and you raise the price of the cigarettes, they pay it. They have an inelastic demand curve. So taxing things with an inelastic demand curve yields greater revenues relative to that deadweight loss. See how these things all tie together? You can't get this. You cannot get such tie-ins from one thing to the next in any other social science. I know you can't. Let me make sure I answered the question. What could account for this result? I haven't been very specific. Maybe I did. I already forget. But anyway, people could leave the state to buy things. Yes, I did say that. They could move to self-sufficiency. They could be buying things on black market where the tax isn't being applied. Any of those things could cause it to happen. When I discussed the curve before, I tried to use broad swipes and suggest that anything could happen to make it so. It's hard to predict what, but no matter what kind of tax you're talking about, in the big picture, in the big scheme of things, these points are necessarily true. So a peak is also necessarily in between them somewhere. It just has to be. An interesting part to this, of course, is in what time frame. Because when you take micro and you look at the determinants of the elasticity of demand or supply, the longer the time frame, the greater the elasticity, because we can change our behavior more in longer periods of time. So if we're going up 25% and not yielding revenues today, in the longer term, it's probably worse than that. Because whatever people are figuring out to do to avoid the tax today, self-sufficiency, going out of state, black markets, whatever, more people will figure out better ways to do it going forward, and you're probably going to find over time that your revenues are actually falling. That's because of elasticities as well. More elasticity in the longer term. So, that I think is a whole bunch of information I see. What happened to the sales tax base? It means the base eroded. What they were able to tax was eroding. It was going somewhere out of state, black markets, like I said. That's what the tax base is the thing you were taxing. Um, let's see, number 8. I better erase my board. Give me a second. I wish I had some elevator music or something queued up. I would play that right now as I erase the board. I'll work on that. Okay, these videos are a little low budget. Number 8, to raise funds aimed at providing more support for public schools, the state government has just imposed a unit excise tax equal to $4 for each monthly unit of wireless phone services sold by each company operating in the state. The following diagram depicts the positions of the demand and supply curves for wireless phone services before the unit excise tax was imposed. Use the diagram to determine the position of the new market supply curve now that the tax hike has gone into effect. And then we're going to answer some questions about that. So, again, I wish I could play some music right now while I work on this whiteboard, but I don't have it lined up. Let me just draw this, recopy this. Actually, you know what? I don't think I have to do that because I can do this. So, you've got the same thing at home, right? Let me set this board down so I don't drop it. So what I've done here, I've just drawn it right on my page. When we tax the sellers, it decreases supply, right? And it decreased it exactly vertically, where's my finger, by the height of the tax. It says in the question that it was a $4 tax. So if you look, what I've done is shifted, when I made my new supply curve there, for each of the prices that were points along the existing supply curve, I got to work with my hands backwards, I added $4 to it. It decreases supply vertically the height of the tax. And once I did that, let me try to get this nice and steady for you so it's not a blur. Now there's a wedge inserted in the market, and the price paid has risen to 29. The price received has fallen to 25. So 29 is the price paid, 25 is the price received. What's the difference between 25 and 29? It's 4. That's because there's a gap of 4 all along between the old curve and the new curve. If they're parallel, this gap between these 2 points is 4, and that's just, there's a number scale. It's 4 apart. So this is, I don't believe this is in the question, but while I have this up here all extreme close up, that's a reference to Wayne's World. Can we say how much the government's making on this? How many will still be bought and sold? 2. Right? The market shrunk from 3 to 2 down here. If 2 are still being bought and sold, where is it? 2, that's 2. And they're giving to the government from the buyers and sellers $4, the government revenue is 8. It's the rectangle. 4 times the 2, it's this rectangle. So the government's going to be making 8. Your author really skips over deadweight loss, but 1/2 base times height would be the deadweight loss. I can actually calculate that in my head. The base is 4 because this triangle, this is its base. It's very hard for me to do backwards. This is its base right here. That's 4 units wide, and it's 1 unit tall from 3 to 2. So 1/2 base times height is 2. So the area of that is 2, whatever our units are in dollars, and that is the deadweight loss from this tax. I guess I should be careful. He says it's an excise tax, which means it's designed to decrease the size of the market, which I don't know why we would ever tax wireless. That's something you do for pollution or cigarettes or something. So if it were truly an excise tax, we wouldn't be worried about the deadweight loss. I think he's just doing that for simplicity. Um, so we have what the government makes, we have what the price paid is, and we have the price received is. Let me recalibrate on the question. Make sure I'm answering everything. Does imposing the $4 per month unit excise tax cause the market price of wireless services to rise by $4 a month? What was it before and what is it now? It was 27, now it's 29. Is that 4? No. It rose by $2 a month. Why? Do the consumers bear all of the burden of the tax? Is all the tax incidence on the consumers? No. It's split. Let's see what B is before I continue. What portion of the $4 per month unit excise tax is paid by the consumer? What portion is paid by the providers of wireless phone services? It's exactly half each, the way these are. The price rose by $2. The price received fell by $2. That's the $4 on the tax. And the elasticities were identical. So it's a nice isosceles, I believe is the correct term, if I remember right. Triangle there that is the deadweight loss. They're both sharing the burden of the tax equally. We levied it on the sellers, so the politicians might have said, "Don't worry, we're taxing we're taxing those companies. We're not taxing consumers." Yeah, well, it gets shared by the consumers. Okay, that's that, and I still have a nice clean whiteboard. The following information applies to the market for a particular item in the absence of a unit excise tax. So he's basically saying, just like in the previous one, it's the same thing. This question, before I drew on my paper, was a drawing of a table just like this, or this table could be made from this drawing. The numbers, I think, would be different. I haven't looked, but our graphs are just an illustration of tables like this. So, looking at the table before I draw the graph, which I'm sure I will, according to the information on the table, in the absence of the unit excise, what is the market price? What is the equilibrium quantity? What is equilibrium? The equilibrium price is the price at which the quantity supplied is equal to the quantity demanded. As you look down your paper, is there such a place where the quantity supplied is equal to the quantity demanded? Yes, it's at the quantities are at 125, and the price that makes that so is 7. So it's $7 and 125. Sure, we're going to have to draw this. I forget, but let's see what the rest of the question says here. Suppose that the government decides to subject producers of this item to a unit excise tax equal to $2 per unit sold. What is the new market price? What is the new equilibrium quantity? Honestly, I want to draw it because seeing it visually makes interpreting that easier and gives me a check, makes it feel safer. So here we go. You have the information in your table, so I'm going to try to be as quick as I can with this and just put it right in the graph. Price. That's pretty terrible. Quantity. Let's see here. My prices range up to 9. So let's see what I can do with broad sweeps. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Of course, that's 0. My quantities range out to 200. So let's go with 50s. I think I can do this well enough with 50s. So 50, about here, 100, 150, 200. I think that looks pretty decent. Let's put some things in here. At $4, the quantity supplied is only 50 units, but the quantity demand is 200. So $4, there's one of those observations, there's the other. There's my quantity demanded. This is going to be my demand curve. When the price rises to $5, the quantity supplied rises because we're willing to sell more at more prices. So that would be about here, 5 and 75. And the quantity demanded falls to 175 because we don't like spending money. So we would be willing and able to purchase less. Okay. At $6, that would be off of here. Our quantity supplied rises to 100, but the quantity demanded falls to 150, be about like here. And I know where I'm going at $7, which is halfway between 6 and 8. That's my equilibrium price. The quantity bought and sold were both 125. This is pretty good for me with my sketching. So that is our equilibrium quantity there. Okay. At $8, the quantity demanded falls to 100. The quantity supplied rises to 150. That should be right above that one. That should be right above that one. And then at $9, the quantity demanded falls to 75. That would be about like here. And the quantity supplied rises to 175, be about there. And there is my supply curve. There's my demand curve. And there was A, which we already explored just looking at the table. Now let's go ahead with B. And suppose the government decides to subject the producer's item to this unit tax equal to $2 per unit sold. So he's telling us he's levying it on the sellers. It doesn't necessarily have to be that way. He consistently does that, probably because he uses taxes as a determinant of supply. That's overly simple, actually, because it could be levied on demand. The outcome, though, wouldn't matter, because all that matters is what? The elasticities, who is more or less flexible. So anyway, he levies a $2 tax on these sellers that will do what to supply? Increase or decrease? Decrease supply. Now, which way is that? Right or left? Toward the origin or away from the origin? It's left, toward the origin. How much? This is something we didn't do when we shifted supply with Chapter 3 or even Chapter 4. How much does it shift supply down? It shifts supply down vertically up $2. So if the sellers require $4 to produce these 50 units, and you're going to tell them they have to pay the government a $2 tax, well, to make the $4, they would now require $6, because $2 of it would be the tax. Whatever this quantity was, at 75, I guess, to make 75, they used to require 5. Now they require 7, because that's $2. This is shifting up by $2. It's shifting down because it's less supply. But how much down does it shift? Vertically up $2. It is contradictory sounding, but it does make sense. I hope it's making sense. They used to require $6 to make 100. Now they would require 8, because $2 of it is going straight to taxes. 125, our old equilibrium quantity, they used to be able to do it 7. Now they need 9, because $2 of it's going to taxes. 150, they used to require $8. Now they would require 10, because $2 of it's going to taxes. They used to make 175, or be willing and able to make 175 for $10. Now they would require $12. So this whole supply curve shifts back. This is less supply. It shifted this way, but vertically up by $2. Another way to look at this, where I drew that arrow, for $9, they used to be willing and able to produce 175, but now for $9, they're only willing and able to produce 125 because of the tax effect. So supply has shifted down, up by $2. Contradictory, a little bit intentional, just to point out the contradiction and hopefully bring it home what's going on there. What is the new market price? What is the new equilibrium quantity? Graphically, I think we have it right here, right? It was now the quantity is where our equilibrium is here at 100, right? And at 100, the consumers were willing and able to spend $8 for 100. If they were willing to spend $8 for 100, guess what they'll spend? $8. But to make 100 units, what the sellers really require is $6. If that's what they require to make them, then that's what they can receive for making them. And the gap between 6 and 8 is $2 every time, right? That's the difference between them. So there is our tax wedge. And I need to revisit the question, make sure I'm answering everything. Let's see here. What is the new market price? Well, the price paid is $8. That's what he's referring to. It's the price that'll be paid. What is the new market quantity? 100. Let me double check my work, make sure, because nobody's there, nobody's around to say, hey, you messed up, so I better make sure I didn't. And that's what I have found in the past. Using, and in the past I did scribble this down on the answer sheet or whatever you want to call it, using the numbers. I don't see any valuable way to do this, to tell you the truth. I did the same thing that I did there, but this is more useful. I hope that makes sense. If it doesn't, you'll have to let me know, but I think that's a pretty thorough explanation. So that was 8. That must mean we only have 9 left to do. Number 9. Wait, what am I? I'm kidding myself. That was number 9. I'm done. Yay. Whew. Okay. Well, I hope that was more fun for you than it was for me. See you next time.